All right, how's everyone doing? I am Rich CELENZA. Thanks for tuning into the Rich CELENZA Show. WTF are you talking about? So, what I'm going to call today's podcast is Most Threats Are Bullshit. So, if you know anything about me, I grew up in the bar and nightclub business with my father, along with having a very religious mother. And I grew up in a household of a lot of Italians. Mainly, that's all I was surrounded by. I didn't know anything else but that for most of my life. On one side of my family, very upper middle class, very wealthy. And the other side, more on the street side, definitely more gambling, booking, hanging out at the track, things in that nature. One side of my family is from Cicero, which is at one time, one of the roughest neighborhoods in all the United States, or North America for that matter. So, and a lot of my uncles live there, and family members as well, including a lot of my cousins. Some still do. And, you know, being around a lot of Italians, there's a lot of threats, right? A lot of shit talking, like any other nationality. But what I realized growing up with my uncles is, I'm not going to specify which uncles, a couple in particular that I love very much still, is, talk is very cheap, right? But when it comes to, it kind of reminds you of a gun situation. I'll just if you have a gun, you don't pull it out to show everybody the gun or to scare people usually. You pull a gun out to shoot someone. That's my theory. Just saying. A lot of people that I knew that would carry guns, that would threaten people, or just always threatening people I knew for the most part were the biggest pussies. Not all of them. Of course, there are a lot of crazy guys out there that threatened, and they would back the threat up, right? They're far few between, though. I realized growing up, so I was into gambling. I loved gambling. Even as a teenager, I really fell in love with it. For some reason, I'm not that involved with it, but both sides of my family were both actually, even the wealthier ones and not so wealthy, both loved gambling. I would be going to a track with one of my uncles who owned horses and would go to the Derby and traveled all over the world, who was unbelievable at picking horses, very wealthy. And then I had other family members that hung out either at the track that took bets or off-track betting and were always losing. Not the ones taking the bets. They would, that was a whole different thing. But a lot of my family members, I'm not talking a few either. I'm talking 20, 30 family members here that would go to the track religiously and bet on many different things. Back then, there was a lot of betting, and I'm going back to the 70s and 80s. A lot of betting on boxing because there was Friday night fights, and boxing was just a monster, especially in the 80s and even the 90s. But a lot of betting, obviously, on all different types of sports. So, was it high school? In high school, a little bit, I started dabbling in booking, and then out of high school, we were taking bets. And then for a while, one of my closest friends ended up becoming a professional gambler, moving to Vegas. We were also taking bets for many, many years off and on in Florida. And some of my closest friends were bookies, still are, some of them. And what I realized, because we were betting, and I used to have to collect money in a vending business besides collecting money for the gambling. And we would have a lot of altercations in our bars because a lot of people that owned these bars were drunks, alcoholics, drug addicts, things in that nature. So you never knew who you were going to get that day. So we would put our vending equipment in there, and either they loved us or hated us. They would love us for bringing all equipment in, and if we made a lot of money with them, they'd like us. But then as time went on, if they thought you stole from them, they'd hate you. Or if you were making a lot of money with them, they didn't want to split the 50% with you. They started to get mad or jealous. They wanted to own their own equipment. The list goes on and on and on. Okay? But what I realized in the bar industry is, one, my father always talked about it, you can't argue with a drunk, right? Let it go. And you almost had to finesse people to get what you want. Threats don't always work the way you think. Sure, sometimes they do, like I said. But most of the time, the calmer you are and the smarter you are, the more things work out for you. So, but when it came to gambling, what I realized, even at a young age, I was such an asshole at times. I'll get into that in the future because I was so nuts. Then I got really big and strong, and I was even betting besides taking bets. And if I lost a bet, I would threaten people that I was betting with, which made no sense, that I was going to go after them if they came after me. All this stupid shit. I'm not even going to I may get into that later. But my behavior was ridiculous for a long period of time. But back to me learning in the bar business, when things didn't, like we started to have an issue, my father would go talk to them. It was a really calming disposition. He didn't walk in a bar and be like, F you, I'm taking my equipment out of here. He didn't want to do that, right? He wanted to keep his equipment in there and keep everyone happy and make money. So I saw that at a very young age. So then after I was an asshole and everything, I said, all these threats, and this was just a mess for a while that I was involved with gambling. I finally just had to become more self-aware and say, listen, I got to take kind of my dad's attitude or the attitude with the bar business and the vending and kind of utilize it with booking, with gambling, with letting guys bet with me. And, if they lost money, for one, and they couldn't pay, trying to work something out with them, threatening them a lot of times, or even going to their house, going to the workplace, all that shit. I'm not saying doesn't sometimes work, or even talking about their kids or what you're going to do, all that type of bullshit. Here's the thing. If you want to be a bookie or you're gambling, whatever the case may be, if you let somebody get too deep, that's on you, asshole. So if a guy, for instance, only makes $1,000 a week and you start letting him bet $1,000 a game and he loses 10 grand and he can't afford you, you're the asshole for taking the bet. That's my theory, right? If I knew a guy only made $1,000 a week, he most likely only, in my eyes, had X amount saved. If he's got a family, I'm thinking, okay, he's got a mortgage, he's got 2 cars, one's at least a car payment. He's got insurance, he's got gas, he's got all these. I know what his bills are most likely. He only has X amount of dollars. So I would just put limits on him. And then if things didn't work out, I'd say, listen, chill out. Because a lot of people would panic because they owe you money. They think you're going to do something to them and all this shit. It wasn't like that. And I think a lot of people, at least I didn't run things like that. I think a lot of people think it's like the movies. You know what I mean? And maybe it is other people the way they do things. I get it. There's threats, there's beatings, there's murder, there's all that shit. But if you are smart, the last thing you ever want to do is make waves. Because a lot of times, even by threatening people, what's going to happen? They're going to go to the police. They're going to beef you out, right? If you can work things out, things are usually going to go your way. And a lot of times, I'll just use, for instance, with gambling, a lot of times people don't want to quit, stop gambling. And if they like you, you like them, and you work things out, you can work them out. That's why, and I'm just using this for an example, but threatening people in life in general, a lot of times, is a lot of bullshit. Even if you're somebody, and I know tons of these people that are always talking shit like, they don't do this, I'm going to tell them I'm going to go take care of them and this is the way it's going to go, or it's going to do that. They better not talk to me this way. I'm going to go do that. I'm like, you ain't most likely going to do shit. Because if you want something done, you just do it. Most of the time, like threats, like I was just saying, are a waste of time on both ends. I'm just letting you know that. So, what else was I going to say regarding the threat thing? I had some other things I wanted to get into regarding people threatening each other, which was, it really makes me laugh, actually. A lot of times when you see, I don't want to get too deep in this, but this even goes inside our families, right, and friends and whatever, even inside our own home, amongst even ones we love very much. We're kind of throwing threats out there, where if you don't do this, I'm going to do that. Or I'm going to do this if you don't do that. Like all this type of shit. I'm not saying that doesn't work again. But again, if you want something done a certain way, there's usually a much better way than threatening. Especially friends, family members, colleagues, and your own kids. All right? And I did a podcast once on this. Like a lot of parents I see threaten their kids. If you don't do this, I'm going to take this away. I think that's the biggest, stupidest shit I ever heard. Right? Because if you say, don't do this, I'm going to take your phone away, then they go upstairs, they're on their computer, and then eventually if they're not on their computer, they're on Netflix, they're on here, they go do this or that. My theory is, I used to tell my kids, still do, well, they're older now, but I would say, listen, they know if you take the phone back, or you take the phone from them, they know they're getting it back. The next time it comes around, they want a new phone, I'll tell them to piss off. You're not getting another phone. That breaks down, you get nothing. So it's a form of action, not threats. So when their phone does break and I don't buy them another phone, I can assure you they're going to remember that a lot more than the bullshit threats or kind of bullshit punishments. So, and I'm just going to wrap it up with that is, when it comes to our kids or anybody else, like punishing people and shit, like to me, it's again a waste. You just got to do a lot of times the right thing. And sometimes it's hard to do, even though we want to react and want to almost physically hurt somebody or just punish them and make them, hurt. And I see this a lot with divorces more than anywhere else, where like you're in love with somebody and now you're going to divorce and you despise them. And every action you have is an action of hatred. It's an action to hurt somebody. It's an action to, instead of making something better, you just continuously make it worse. And I call it taking the wick. And instead of blowing it out, the wick, when there's a fire, to just kill it, they start an infernal, right? So, if you are that type of person, I'm telling you right now, threats, trying to punish people, all those type of things for the most part, I don't think are going to help you. And I'm telling you this firsthand because I lived it. Try to work things out where even when things go wrong, you try to make them right. Literally take the high road, especially in relationships. And I know a lot of times you may have a husband or a wife that is the biggest a-hole in the world and you despise them. But you have no other choice, because a lot of times, especially if you have children with that person, you have to understand the way you're treating that person. Your children see the way you're treating their mother or their father, right? And and that goes for work as well. A lot of us may lose our jobs and you may resent your, the owner, your boss, whatever the case may be. Don't get caught up in that shit and that negativity. You need to learn how to move on, move to the future. Again, don't get caught up in making threats or even snitching on people. All that type of bullshit is bullshit. Learn to just move on and do the best you can, right? Take the goddamn high road. I talk about it all the time. So I'm going to just leave it there. Quit your bitching and moaning if you are. Kick it in the ass. And again, if you are out there threatening people, you know what I mean? And you've got nothing to back it. Don't be shocked when you get your ass kicked or something bad happens to you. Because I watch some of these shows like 2020, Dateline, Nightline, and sometimes you hear I see these things that happen amongst couples or husband and wife or just partners, and they kill their partner and all these type of things. And I think a lot of times, there's a lot of threats constantly be throwing around, when in reality, a lot of people could have just separated themselves from that person. Not always. Not everything's going to go your way. But if you keep attacking one another, things just build up. And at the end of the day, is it really worth it? Are the threats worth it? That's what you really have to weigh out. Because a lot of times I think we think by threatening somebody that, they're carrying all that baggage around, like, oh, they're scared of me or they're going to do what I told them to do. Most of the time when they walk away from you, it's not like the movies. Believe me, it's not like they're walking around panicking, scared for their life most of the time. It's not like that. That's just my theory. All right. And I get one last thing. We watch a lot of these podcasts or movies or documentaries on the outfit and mobs and all this, and they did this, and if you don't do this, that in their realm, in their world, that's their world. You have to understand that's not your world. Don't think that's your world. You don't live the way they live. You don't think the way they think. Don't try to pretend that you're something you're not as well, especially when it comes to threats. Because a lot of people think they're connected, or they think they're a lot tougher than they are, or they think by doing certain things that people are all going to respect them a certain way. And I'm here to tell you, a lot of times they don't. They actually lose a lot of respect for you. So anyways, if you get a chance, check out my YouTube channel. Just my name, Rich CELENZA. Where the hell am I at here? I'm on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram as well. And what else? I got a Mastering Self-Confidence program out there. Just try to help men find the woman or women of their dreams, even if they've been through a bad breakup or divorce. And that's all I really got for you today. But please, if you're gonna talk shit, don't be prepared. You're gonna get your ass kicked a lot of times. It's just gonna come back at you. Or if you're somebody out there constantly threatening people, to me, that means you ain't got shit to back you. That's just my theory. All right, take care, and if you're traveling, safe travels.